the driving seat in my mind was always that negative voice. She just didn't give me the space to appreciate what I was doing. Whereas that voice is so much more quieter now that there's room for positive thinking.
Welcome to the SheClicks Women in Photography podcast. I'm Angela Nicholson, and I'm the founder of SheClicks, which is a community for female photographers. In these podcasts, I talk with women in the photographic industry to hear about their experiences, what drives them, and how they got to where they are now. This episode is with Erica Hawkins, a multi-award-winning documentary wedding photographer with a creative eye shaped by her background in art publishing. Her personal projects have earned recognition, including being featured in the National Portrait Gallery for the Taylor Wessing Portrait Prize. After overcoming cancer, Erica gained fresh perspective and now shares her journey to help others in the creative industry confront imposter syndrome and unlock their potential. Hi Erica, thank you so much for joining me today on the SheClicks Women in Photography podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk to you.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. So can we start right at the beginning? What was it that first sparked your interest in photography?
Well, I've always loved photography. It's always been something, I was always the friend with the camera, took it everywhere. And I didn't really start thinking of it as something that I could do professionally until I was in my late 20s. Before that, filmmaking was the thing that I was probably most passionate about. It felt like an easy route for me to kind of tell stories. And I loved the medium. I loved playing with cameras, making short films. And photography just felt like something that I just did rather than something that I could do professionally. So yeah, it was when I was in my mid-20s that I started to kind of think about it more as something I could do for a career. But yeah, it always been, I worked in the Boots lab before I went to uni developing photos. One of my work experiences was in a photography studio. So it kind of ran alongside my passion with films, but it definitely was its kind of cousin. Film was what I was kind of most excited by. So that was quite a shift when I suddenly started to think, oh, actually, photography could be something I could do as a career. So that was quite a big change for my mindset.
Did you have another career before you switched to photography?
Yeah, I think for probably like lots of people that go and study film, the reality of working in the film industry becomes very apparent when you realise you don't know many people, you don't have the same connections, and it just seemed really hard. And I kind of very quickly thought, do you know what, I'm not certain that this is the route I want to take anymore. But I knew I was creative. I knew that I wanted a job that would allow me to create. So I kind of started to look for jobs within the creative industries. And I was really lucky that I started off working for an art publishing company, and I was there for about 5 years. And so my role when I started there was literally reviewing imagery that was sold to companies like IKEA, Habitat, big high street brands that would sell artwork. And my job was to review the stats and see what imagery was working and what wasn't working. So although I wasn't being creative, like my brain was amongst all this wonderful artwork, and it was kind of seeping into my knowledge. Every month I would have to review the stats and present the stats to the sales team and say, look, this is what's working at the moment. This isn't working. And I think that daily dose of inspiration was wonderful. And I loved being part of that team. And as I was there throughout the years, my role progressed, and I ended up working in the publishing department. So I was working directly with the buyers, picking imagery that would work or would work for that season or for, yeah. So I really enjoyed that. But again, it kind of felt like I wasn't being hands-on with a camera. There was different departments within the art group, and they were the proper photographers. They were people. There was retouchers there that knew what they were doing. And mine was much more kind of like almost sales driven and working with buyers, and so not getting to be creative, but very much enjoying artwork on a daily basis. So yeah, that was the kind of precursor for me deciding that I wanted to start experimenting more.
That sounds like a really interesting grounding.
It absolutely was. And it was one of those ones that it took me a little while in my journey to realize how much that position, it gave me so much knowledge that, a lot of other people just wouldn't have, to really understand what the general public like in terms of their artwork. This is the artwork that they're literally hanging on their walls. And I got a real deep dive into all that knowledge, and we could see, why certain landscapes would do better than, say a portrait, and we could see that, certain formats would do better. So, that kind of knowledge is brilliant, but I hadn't really valued it in terms of becoming a wedding photographer. I hadn't really connected how important they both were until a bit later on in my career. But yeah, it was a brilliant job and I really enjoyed it. And I think it was one of those things, unfortunately, the art group went into administration. So it was at that point that I thought, okay, what else am I going to do? And I think had that not have happened, I probably would have stayed, because I was enjoying it, but I wasn't creating. But it was a brilliant job and I loved learning all about the different artwork. So yeah, and it's one of those things in hindsight, it was a bit of a blessing. You don't realize at the time when things feel like they're going horribly wrong, but actually they're a new venture in your life, and it took a great turn and definitely encouraged me to decide that I want to be creative. I want a job that I'm actually getting to create. And it was after that I thought, okay, I need to look for something that's not full time, so it gives me the space to actually start to create, because I think that's the hardest thing, to get that started whilst you've got a full-time job. So I was able to find another creative part-time job and then start to experiment a bit more with photography. So that's kind of how that started.
So what were your first steps towards professional photography? So you were working part-time and then sort of bringing some photography into your life as a career?
Yes, yeah. So it was at a stage, so yeah, I was in my late 20s, so I was at that point for a lot of people where everyone's getting married. All my friends were getting married, and I was really lucky. I'd been a bridesmaid 7 times, and every time, obviously, I took my camera to the weddings because I loved taking pictures. And my friends would start to say, "Oh, Erica, we really loved your pictures," and I was like, "Well, of course you did, because I'm your best friend. I can get into the spaces that photographer probably can't." So I kind of didn't really take it too seriously at that point, but I was getting this lovely feedback, and I was almost getting a little portfolio of work that kind of made it look like I was shooting weddings. But then one of my best friends, her brother-in-law to be, was getting married, and he didn't have a photographer, and he just said, "Look, why don't you come along, give it a go?" And the pressure wasn't on, because it was obvious that he hadn't valued photography enough to book a photographer. So that kind of gave me a bit of a safety net, that I thought, well, okay, he's happy to take a risk, and that was the beginning. And it just kind of snowballed a little bit after that, because he got married, and then his friends got married, and it just very quickly I had bookings coming in, and it wasn't long after I did that wedding that I got a Don't Tell the Bride booking, which to this day, I think it was actually my 3rd wedding.
Oh wow.
Where I got this call. I know, and I sometimes think that there's like the wedding photography gods are telling me, "Erica, you're meant to be a wedding photographer. Look at these signs that we placed, but they've been there all along." And yeah, the Don't Tell the Bride was definitely one of those ones where, that was about 13 years ago. My website was up and running. I had, a small number of actual weddings on there, but back then you didn't need that much to be seen, because we just didn't have the same number of websites online. So yeah, for some crazy reason I got this call, and a few days later I shot the Don't Tell the Bride wedding, and that kind of was the beginning of this huge, I think, imposter syndrome for me, because what that did was it made people, it was an assumption that my level of experience was higher than it was, because I'd done this Don't Tell the Bride wedding. It was my 3rd wedding. I was still charging like £300 a wedding because I was so fresh. It suddenly started, the huge anxiety and worry and doubt began to weigh on my shoulders. And so that was very early on, and I could recognize that there was something panicky about weddings that I didn't like. And for a time I was like, I'm not sure I can do many of these, because I was almost having panic attacks before each wedding. My husband was like, "Erica, I'm not sure you should do too many, because it's become such a huge thing every time you do a wedding." He's like pulling out his hair, because I'm like, "Oh God, I've got a wedding." And it was, I couldn't. The emotional feelings that I would attach to my work and all the things I thought could go wrong just weighed on me so heavily. So I didn't take on many bookings initially, even though I had, the the snowball effect of don't tell the bride meant inquiries were coming in, and I was taking, I every year I kind of just took on a handful because I was really nervous. I was like, I'll just do that. I'll keep my other job because that's safe. That's paying the bills. This is just, we'll see what happens with this. And then I kind of coasted like that for a few years, where this other safety net of a job kind of stopped me risking anything. And then I did just enough weddings that I felt like I could just about call myself a wedding photographer. But yeah, that worry and that fear really kind of stopped me growing my business, definitely, because I just didn't know how I could live with that regularly all the time. So yeah, so that was a big thing.
There's quite an irony there, isn't there? Because you have some success and you've got lots of inquiries, which makes you feel an imposter because, you can't possibly be that good. But equally, if you just had one or two inquiries every now and again, you'd be thinking, well, I'm clearly not good enough because nobody's coming to me. And it's like, how do you fight out of that circle?
I think this is what makes my story like a bit unique in a way, is that I have kind of traveled along it and I'm at a different point. And there's been a couple of things that have made me realize that my imposter syndrome was something that was very unhealthy. So for me, as in that kind of the early stages of my kind of wedding photography, it was also the same time that I got married myself. I lost my mum to cancer and I became a mum. And all those things meant that I naturally would have probably shrunk my business anyway, because, when you have children, I was primary caregiver to my kids. So I didn't want to take on too many weddings. So I naturally would have kept the number small as well. Losing my mum meant I lost a year of work because she was poorly and I needed to care for her. And I didn't know how long she was going to be around. So I cancelled a chunk of weddings because I needed to be there for my mum. And then another thing that happened in that time was 2020, I got cancer. So and it was 2020, and that was the year that everyone's businesses shrunk as well. Before 2020, a good thing that happened is a picture I took of my son ended up in the National Portrait Gallery in the Taylor Wessing Portrait Prize. And this is another example of kind of doing well and then it almost doing the reverse mentally, because to have a picture that you've taken in the National Portrait Gallery is such a huge achievement. And I felt so out of place. Like my first, the evening that the Taylor Wessing Portrait Prize was, we had all the different photographers come together and they announced the people that won. But my first feelings when I saw the picture of my son was one of, I felt embarrassed. I felt like it shouldn't have been there. I started to look at the colours. I started to think maybe it's not as I think everyone can see what I can see. It's not as good as I thought it was. I felt, the all of those horrible negative thoughts and negative feelings just overwhelmed me. And this little voice in my head was so loud. And I had to stop myself after a good, 15, 20 minutes of this kind of almost panicky, like, oh my God, I don't belong here. I had to I recognized what I was doing, and that was quite an eye-opening point for me. And I kind of said, right, stop. This is such an achievement. You need to let yourself enjoy this moment. So I kind of talked myself down a bit. The other voice started to kind of be like, no, don't say that, Erica. She belongs here. And I kind of went, okay, right, I'm going to own this. That is a good picture of my son. It's a great picture. And it's worthy of being in this spot because, it is. But eventually the other voice went, well, it's not a wedding photo and that's what your job is. And you've never had that kind of success for wedding photography. And it wasn't long before that voice was in control again. And I think that's what, to have had these kind of great pockets of what's on the outside is success, and then just not feel it and it do the opposite and make me feel mentally just the burden was just too heavy, was horrible. And so for me, the turning point was in 2020 when I got cancer. That is one of those things that, you would never wish it upon anyone. It's a horrible, horrible thing to go through. I was really lucky. I didn't need chemotherapy or anything like that. So mine was kidney cancer. They nipped in, removed my kidney, and then it's a case of just monitoring me and making sure I'm okay. So my sometimes I feel like I've got imposter syndrome when it comes to cancer, because my cancer story is not as horrific as other people. So I feel, but what it meant is it made me question so much about my life. And for a period of time, when I didn't know how bad the cancer was, they had to kind of, you had this big scan and you find out. And in that little period, I kept on thinking, oh, what if? And obviously I'd lost my mum 5 years before that. So I was thinking, what if I'm not going to get a chance to be here for my children? And you start to question all the things if you suddenly think your life is going to be cut short. And I felt really grateful, because lots of the things that were important to me, like my relationship with my family and my friends and my husband, they got massive big ticks. I felt really comfortable, and I felt like if my life was to end now, everyone who I love would know I love them. And so I felt that was a huge tick, which is a big thing. The big thing that I didn't feel good with was my work. And it wasn't what I was producing, it was my feelings about my work. And that kind of understanding that I don't want that to be how everyone knows me, as Erica, the warrior, that, all my children to think about how I ran my business. Oh, she was really anxious. She was really worried all the time. She didn't think she was any good, but she was all right, but she just didn't see it. So I kind of thought, no, I don't want that. If I've only got a short amount of time left, I want to feel differently about my work. I want to stop. I want that voice to kind of be quiet. And that, for me, that was the little gift that I got from cancer. It just made that negative voice a bit quieter, and that allowed the positive voice to start kind of going, no, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And I suddenly had this extra fire in my belly where I felt a little bit more motivated. And as well, 2020, I'd left my other part-time job at the end of 2019. So my safety net was gone. And I think the pandemic, the cancer, the previous job going, all those things combined just, put about a fire in my stomach that I hadn't had before. And I felt excited about work. I felt, I could kind of see what I wanted it to be and what I wanted it to be in relationship to my life. So that for me, that has been a huge turning point. And I think it's what I find hard is when I recognize in other people that they have the same level of doubt about themselves and the same level of anxiety to do with their work or their business. And I recognize it as a different kind of creative doubt. Because I think what I've come to learn is that us creatives, we all doubt our work. And there's a healthy amount of questioning yourself. And there's a healthy amount of, was this the best thing to do? Because that's how we grow. And that should be part of who we are. Personally, that's what I believe. But I can recognize that there's a healthy way of viewing that. And then there's an unhealthy way. And when that unhealthy way is in control of your thoughts all the time, you need to really put some things into place to change your way of thinking. And unfortunately, I would never wish cancer upon anyone. And it's a hard thing to kind of understand what the best points are for different people. So at the moment, I'm trying to have like a bit of a deep dive into imposter syndrome and understand it a little bit more, so we can offer some kind of structure to helping people move through it and recognize when it's unhealthy or healthy doubt that they've got. So that's kind of where I'm at the moment with it.
That's really interesting. It's quite upsetting to think about somebody feeling that anxious about their work and what they do. But I think it's really interesting that what you decided was actually you didn't think about your work so much as your reaction to it and how other people would perceive you, and wanting to leave a legacy of your children thinking mum was happy, mum loved her job, is a really interesting way of spinning it, rather than saying she was a great photographer.
Oh, absolutely, because I think it's so subjective. And that's that. I think that's where the level of doubt will always be. You can't really ever go, oh, I'm an awesome photographer, I'm a brilliant photographer, because what's good for one person is different for someone else. Someone's going to like my style, someone's going to hate my style. And I think when you take away needing that kind of validation, it's quite freeing, because for me, I've recognized that I need to create work that I like. And I need to be proud of that work. And once I've recognized that, once I could start to view work that I produced as exciting and seeing what made me go, oh, and it was work that's, I can look at work from my first year and I can still see that I was always there. I just had completely different feelings about it. I didn't feel, because the driving seat in my mind was always that negative voice. She just didn't give me the space to appreciate what I was doing. Whereas that voice is so much more quieter now that there's room for positive thinking. And I never had that before. And I think that is what I want my children to understand, is that you can have self-doubt, but you also need to be positive in what you're producing and excited by what you're producing. Whether, for me, that's photography, and I want them to know I love my job. I want them to be motivated by, or be inspired to think that you can have a job that you love, and that job. And if I'm just showing them all the negative stuff all the time, they're not gonna clock that. They're only small. They're 10 and 7. So hopefully now that they can kind of see that I'm very excited about my work, even though it makes me feel nervous at times.
Well, a little bit of nerves, they say, are good. I mean, most actors say that they're nervous before they go on stage, and that helps them bring out the best. And I think, like you say, most creatives are probably very, very similar.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you didn't believe the evidence of seeing your picture on the wall at the National Portrait Gallery?
No, not at all.
It's something I see, at SheClicks, we have a challenge every month, and 25 images are selected to go on the gallery online. And the number of messages I get saying, "Oh, I can't believe you chose my picture. Thank you so much. I can't believe there's so much good work here." And then we've been very lucky. We've had an exhibition at the Fujifilm House of Photography. We've had exhibitions at the Photography and Video Show at the NEC in Birmingham, next year in London. And every photographer who's had a picture selected, "I can't believe you selected mine because, everyone else's work is so good." And yes, and yours is just as good. And it's a really hard message for people to take on board. I mean, they're absolutely overjoyed that the pictures are there.
Yeah.
Has such a nice impact. But for some reason, we seem to be quite hardwired into this, I've somehow snuck in.
Oh, absolutely. And it takes a long time for that to go. And I think our industry doesn't help in many ways. I think that there's lots of, like, for a long time, obviously, like, so for me that had a part-time job alongside my photography career, online, that's almost kind of frowned upon. You get people say, "Oh, you weekend warrior," and everything gets boxed off, professional, amateur, and you kind of don't really know often where you sit. And the breathing space for doubt is so huge in our industry. I feel like that when you win a competition, it feels good. When you don't win a competition, it feels bad. And there's lots of things that they just very quickly, you can feel on top, and it can flip back round. And unfortunately, that's just part of our industry. And I think when you become aware that you're going to have this little emotional roller coaster when it comes to, how the industry makes you feel, you can kind of accept it a little bit more. But when you make that the only thing that validates your work, then it's much harder to believe in yourself. So I totally understand why people would be, "What, my work?" Because I totally get it. I felt exactly the same. But what's brilliant is that they're putting themselves out there, and they're challenging themselves, and they kind of know it's an emotional roller coaster ride that they're going to be on, but they've jumped on it. And what makes me sad is that I know a number of people whose work is amazing that wouldn't ever think to enter anything because they don't see themselves as belonging in that space. And that's what's really sad, is the hurdles that we put in front of ourselves in terms of allowing, not necessarily growth, but just allowing something positive to come into our world. A lot of people with really unhealthy imposter syndrome don't even give themselves that opportunity. And that's what's really, really sad. But at the same time, I understand it, because it isn't great when things don't, for every picture I've won an award for, there's 100 that haven't won. But like I said, I feel very differently now. I don't take the pat on the back from the industry as the only way to feel good about my work. So I'm a bit more like, I just shrug now. I'm like, all right, well, I love that picture, so there.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I never used to have that voice. So
sticking with the theme of challenges or maybe national competitions like the Taylor Wessing, I think it's important to remember that it's a numbers game. And however many thousands of pictures get entered, maybe they have a short list of 100 or 200 or something like that, a long list. And they're all fabulous pictures, but only one can win. So it's really hard. You're not necessarily going to be the winner.
No, definitely.
The numbers, the chances, it's the same as a lottery almost.
Yeah.
It's slightly different. But so it's important to enjoy the process. And if you get shortlisted, fantastic, celebrate that. If you win, what a brilliant marketing opportunity. But it doesn't mean the other shortlisted images weren't just as good. It was just on the day. That was the one the judges picked. So
100%. And I think understanding the subjectivity of the judges' preferences as well is really important with any competitions. I think so when that picture of Jacob kind of got shortlisted, I was like, I'm going to enter this to, I started to Google other competitions that I could enter the picture, because I just thought I'm going to gobble up every award that is available for this kind of genre. I didn't win anything else. And I got shortlisted, I kind of got far in some things, but that didn't make me, at the time it did. I kind of thought, it's not as good as I thought it was. But it just goes to show that different judges will connect with different images. And sometimes if you've got an image that you absolutely love, just keep pushing it into different competitions. The chances are one day someone is going to connect with someone else. And I think ultimately, if you're loving the work you produce, that's the biggest person you need to be impressing is yourself, because then you're going to be more motivated to produce more of it, because it's the best feeling when you take a picture that you're really proud of. I love that feeling. I skip home now, and the first thing I do is like, Steve, come and look at this shot. I'm so excited by this shot. And yeah, there might be, other things in the gallery I'm not that excited by, but one good picture, it just can fill you up. And that's what I love about photography. It's such a great feeling when you've achieved something that you kind of surprise yourself by, especially in my line of work where it's very documentary and reportage. I don't really know what I'm going to produce until it's kind of unfolding in front of me. It's great for them.
It strikes me that shooting documentary photography for weddings is another level of stress, because if you do the traditional photography, you know there's got to be a series of shots that you have to take, and you've got to round up all the aunties and uncles and everybody and get them in the photo. But if you're using a documentary style, then you're kind of just looking out for stuff the whole time, and you've got to have eyes in the back of your head.
100%. And I think that's another part of understanding the level of doubt that comes with the job. And there's only so much you can do to safeguard your worries and your concerns. And I think that over the years, I've come to recognize, okay, these are the things I need to do in order for me to get the best gallery I can for my clients. And one of the things for me, because I'm very documentary, is talking to my couples beforehand and explaining the process and continually, throughout the build up to their wedding, reminding them I'm quite hands off. I'm not going to be directing too much of your day. If you're getting ready in a dark room, I will find the best way to shoot that dark room. A different photographer will be like, well, no, this is dark. Let's bring you into the light because I want the best photos. Where I'm much more about, I want their experience to be as authentic for them as possible. So I remind them of that. But sometimes the level of, the little doubt can creep in, and I'm like, oh, should I drag them over to the light but if I've had that conversation with them before and they have booked me because they want someone who is more hands off, then I know I've got their permission to be creative in whichever environment is presented to me. And yeah, it might mean that it's a grainier picture, but I know they're okay with that. And then I can be true to myself that I'm capturing authentic moments. Because the minute you interrupt a scene and say, oh, can I just pull you guys over here? Can you come and do that over here in the good light? You've changed the scene, and it's much more about the pictures rather than the moment. So for me, it's always the moment rather than being technically perfect. So yeah, it's just having the confidence to own your style a little bit. And I think that's something that I've got through time as well.
Do you find that sometimes you've taken pictures that the couple didn't know you'd taken, and they're really surprised and happy with the shots you've got because they've been so focused on their event and, being together, and then they see your pictures and you've captured a special moment?
Yeah, absolutely. My couples are always, it's one of the biggest kind of the feedback I get a lot is all the moments that we didn't know happened that you've been able to capture. So it's definitely I always say I work my socks off on a wedding day, and it's very non-stop. I don't tend to put my camera down unless I'm eating. So, I'm always looking for those moments, and I work predominantly as a single shooter. So there's not someone else to kind of fall back on and to go and, capture the other moments. So I'm on it constantly from the second I start to when I finish. So yeah, I think they are quite surprised that I'm able to get the breadth of imagery that I get. But for me, that's part of telling the story. When I kind of think about their gallery as a whole and the way it flows, and if you've got the same scene shot kind of in a very similar way, for it kind of just slows the story down. And I think my background in film really helps the way that I tell wedding stories, because I think about the way it's going to be broken up and the way it's going to be perceived. And I'm often thinking about, okay, what's your B-roll stuff, what stuff is going to help tell the story but isn't focused on the main kind of characters. And I think that's very much what my galleries, what helps them shine, is that there's I purposely don't really put much of the wedding couples on my Instagram. Most of the time it's all the other little things that are happening, because I want people to know this is what I like to do, this is what I like to focus on. So I haven't taken your dress out and hung it in a tree and lit it perfectly because I spent another 10 minutes hanging out with the bridesmaids and I managed to get some natural kind of, some close-ups of their hands, reading letters and things like that. So for me, having the time to focus on those little moments just means that my couples will get that slightly more unexpected gallery. So they're always really surprised, and I get lovely feedback from them.
It sounds like, I know you said you still get a bit nervous, but it sounds like you really enjoy what you do. Do you find it a much more pleasurable experience when you're shooting now compared to when you were having really bad imposter syndrome?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is when I talk about holding myself back, this is the difference, that I go into a wedding now more excited, that the nerves and the adrenaline that you get as a wedding photographer are there. But I don't have that voice going, Erica, you're going to make a mistake. Oh, the couple I don't think they'll like that. Don't do that. But, I've got my positive voice is kind of saying, oh, go do this. I think the couple will like that. Go, I don't really try that. And so, I think it's definitely, I've recognized the things that are important to me. And the huge one is the relationship I have with my clients before the day. For me, I need to know them a little bit, because I think I kind of describe it a little bit like a hug. When you meet someone for the first time, I'm quite a big hugger and I like to kind of give a hug, but I'm very aware of the other people. And I'm always like, do you like a big hug or not? And if they don't like it, then I kind of back off a little bit and I'm like, oh no, I won't give you a big hug. And I think wedding photography is a bit like that. You kind of need to understand someone's tolerance for that big squeeze of a hug or not. So when I get couples that love a big hug, it basically is my way of knowing that they're fine with me being in their space. When I get couples that don't like that or are a little bit more reserved, I understand I'm going to have to work this couple in a slightly different way. They probably won't want me in their space as much, and I want to respect that. And it's understanding the balance of getting like really great wedding photography that might be more for me but actually makes them feel uncomfortable. So like my clients always come first, and often I might think that would have been an amazing shot, but they might be the kind of couple that I think, right, they don't want me that close. They need more space, and they don't appreciate me being in that moment because it feels like it just won't feel right for them. So I think reading my couples, and that's a skill that, again, I hadn't quite realized how important that was for me as a photographer, to really connect with people and to empathize with how they're feeling on the day. And that's always been something that I'll do almost negatively for my imposter syndrome, because I can start questioning myself a lot. But now it's something that I have understood is a skill that I can use to my advantage. And when I know I've got someone's consent, I can take pictures that they're the ones that probably get me way more excited. But it's also okay to not take them, because sometimes the couple won't want that and they might want some space. And ultimately, I run a business, and them being happy with their gallery and happy with how I made them feel on the day comes above everything. So that's really important to me.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Okay, well, I think it's a really nice time to go to 6 from SheClicks. I've got 10 questions from SheClickers, and I would like you to answer 6 questions, please, by picking numbers from 1 to 10. So could I have your first number, please?
Okay, I'm going to go for number 7.
Number 7. If you could have changed one thing in your career, what would it be? That's from Penny.
I think it would have been not taking myself seriously enough. I wish I'd done that sooner. I wish I'd realised that this is something that can work, been a bit braver. That would definitely be up there. It's a short answer.
That's okay. No, well, sometimes the short answers are the ones that's, that's the most ingrained thing.
Yeah.
So, okay, good answer. Can I have your second number, please?
Okay, let's go for number 3.
With a documentary approach, how do you make sure that you're in the right place at the right time to get the special shot? That question's from Liz.
Oh, I like that one. Okay, I think so this comes back to believing in yourself as a photographer and understanding how you're going to shoot the day. So we can have 5 different documentary photographers in a room, and each one of them will shoot that scene differently. So first of all, there's not necessarily a perfect spot. It just has to be the perfect spot for you as a photographer. So I think for me, like one of the things, I can think of a recent picture that I took, which I absolutely love. It's a shot of a whole group of wedding guests sitting down. They're all taking a shot, and there's also a bride at the front, and she's taking a shot. So this is a good example of thinking, okay, I knew this moment was coming. It's anticipating the moment and thinking about what's important for you as a photographer. What do you want to tell in that story? I always kind of say, what's your why? What's your why? And in that moment, that for me, that why was like, okay, I want to tell this story. I know what the story is. I want all the guests and the bride doing a shot at the same time. So once I knew what my why was, it was about, well, where do I need to be to tell that story? Where's the best space to be in that? And for me, I knew I needed to be up high so I could get them all in the shot. So it was, at that point I was down below and I had to quickly run back up onto where the couple get married and stand behind them to get that shot. So I think it's really important to understand what story you want to tell. So when it comes to a wedding or family work or anything like that, you need to have a good understanding of what story you wanting to tell. The minute you know what that story is, you kind of know where you need to be. If you don't know what the story is, how can you take the picture? So yeah, it's a little bit about anticipation, but also questioning yourself, kind of really thinking about what story do I want to tell. Often I'm thinking about framing a moment, and I'll keep parts of parents slightly in the edge of the frame because it gives the picture context, because I'm always thinking about what is the bigger story rather than just being very literal in terms of like taking a picture of what's happening in front of you. It's always about the storytelling. So yeah, long answer to that question is understand what story you want to tell and then find the best spot to tell that story the way that you want to tell it.
Obviously, you've got the overall story of the wedding, but it's those individual scenes where there's something to it more than here's a portrait of the bride and groom. It's a moment in that wedding.
Yeah, be open to different stories happening. I think if you just focus, this is very wedding specific, but if you're just focused on the main story, which is a couple getting married, then the gallery will just look very similar to all the other ones. But if you're open to the other stories, so you need the time to think about it. You need the time to connect with the guests. You need to be listening. All your senses really need to be kind of going off, so you can have that kind of foresight into your picture.
Okay. Can I have your third number, please?
Let's go for number 10.
Number 10. What are your top tips for dealing with imposter syndrome? That question's from Sue.
Okay, that's a big one. So upon reflection, because obviously my situation was very unique in what happened, but I think I've recognised a few things that has really helped. One of them is setting clear goals. So I think imposter syndrome can rear its ugly head when you're not measuring yourself against anything. So I never used to do that because I didn't take myself seriously. But after 2020, I set myself goals. I kind of told myself, what do you need from your business? What are you actually needing? So being brave enough to set some goals so then you can measure. And I was hitting them. I just hadn't set myself goals. I hadn't realized the things I was doing. So I couldn't take that moment to reflect and go, well done, you've done that. But if you set yourself goals, you can acknowledge when you've hit them. Without that, you're kind of aimless. So setting goals would be a big one. Having a network of photographers that you can talk to is another really great tip that I would give, because you can bounce ideas off them. You can talk to them when you're feeling a bit wobbly. it just becomes a great place to like lean upon other people who are in the industry or have a similar interest to yourself. So that would be another one. Really kind of enjoy being part of a community, because you start to feel like you belong when you're not part of that and you're on the edges of it. You know, for years I was kind of on the edges of groups, and I would kind of watch from the sidelines and never really feel like I belonged in it again, because I just didn't feel like it wasn't a space that I felt I was allowed to step into. But give yourself the permission to join clubs, join groups. So that would be another one. Probably could think of lots of different things, but they're some of the big ones.
They sound really good.
Another one would be give yourself permission not to enter awards as well. Like, awards, it's not the only way to get validation. And if you are feeling if you're aware that your internal voice is a lot more negative, you might not get the best things out of entering those competitions. So be kind to yourself. If you don't want to do things, it's okay to say no to things as well. So yeah, that would be another one.
Yeah. Goals could be to learn a technique or, a type of editing, or to use a flash for the first time. If you're a novice photographer and there's certain things you've never done, you've never switched away from auto, maybe your challenge is to start using aperture priority or shutter priority or something like that.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be earn this amount of money. It's just breaking things down a little bit. So you could, like you say, you said earlier about putting ticks in boxes. It's a nice positive thing to do.
Definitely. From a professional point of view, I think sometimes we can define success as being connected to money or awards or things like that. And I think for me, when I realised how important it was to have a balance, so having time with my children as well as having a career, I feel like I can say I'm successful because I'm running a business that gives me the income that I need so I can spend time with my family. It doesn't mean I'm not earning loads of money. I'm not going to be as financially successful as other photographers, but I'm not going to take that away from the fact that I've set myself a goal of having time with my family alongside a creative job. And to have those two things, now I can be really proud of that and say I'm doing well. So define your goals and success, and it's not always about money. It can be an achievement. It can be learning a new skill,
or even enjoying a new aspect or something like that. Some people say to me, "Oh, I'm only an amateur photographer. I'm not a professional." I think, well, the differentiation actually between amateur and professional is your income stream.
Mm-hmm.
It says nothing about the quality of the work you produce. The main goal of being an enthusiast photographer really is to enjoy it. And if you produce pictures that you're really happy with, then that is absolutely brilliant. So focus on the enjoyment, I think.
Yeah, I think, again, it's one of those things that the industry, it's sad that you even have to put yourself in one of those boxes. Can't you just be a photographer? Like, why does it have to be one or the other? If you like taking pictures and you enjoy, you're a photographer. Like, it doesn't really matter if you're professional or not. So that's what I think anyway. So.
Absolutely. Okay. Can I have your fourth number, please?
Let's go for 9.
If you could ask a question of any photographer that you haven't met but whom you admire, who would that be and what would the question be? That's questions from Helen.
Oof. Well, I would probably, that's a good one.
Yeah. I'm gonna throw it. They can be living or dead.
I would probably go for a living one. So there's a photographer I admire called Jenny Lewis. She does these great environmental portraits. I just really love her work. So I would probably love to sit down and talk to her and find out how she got into that, because I think I love the combination of it being almost documentary but totally staged, and it's that genre of work is something that I'm definitely interested in and something I would like to explore. So I would very selfishly just talk to Jenny and find out how she does it and what does she do, how does she connect with her couples, and I'll just ask lots of questions like that. So yeah, Jenny Lewis, her work's amazing.
Fantastic. Okay. Can I have your penultimate number, please?
Have I said number 5?
You've not said number 5.
Okay, let's go for number 5.
Right. What advice would you give to someone just before their very first wedding shoot? And that question's from Janina.
Okay. And before their very first shoot, they've never done a wedding before. So just the very first time.
Yeah, that's right.
Oof. What would I say to them? Well, it would probably be very, very boring logistically. Things like check all the things that you can check. It would be like, make sure you've got enough batteries, make sure you've got enough memory cards. It would be all the things that the things that they've got control over. because I think there's nothing worse than kind of giving advice on things that you can't really control, especially just before someone's shoot.
Yeah.
Ideally, they would have had the time to connect with their couples. Ideally, they would have the time to understand their style. But if it's your very first shoot and you've not done a wedding before, I would just, logistically make sure you've ticked off all of the things that you can control. Maybe have a good idea of what kind of photography speaks to you, so you can start from day one evolving your own style. Try not to be too influenced from the industry. Kind of know what you enjoy taking. I shoot my family the same way I shoot weddings, and what I enjoy from a picture is evident throughout my portfolio. So I think if you can go into your first kind of wedding job with your own sense of style or your own inclination of what you enjoy, and you can kind of get that sense from looking at other people's work. You kind of know the work that you think is amazing. Some people will look at portraits and think, I love these. I love the way this person has shot this portrait. Other people will be drawn to more authentic moments. People might like the way someone edits. So I think have a steer when you're going in. Otherwise, you'll end up just doing what is a very safe gallery. So have a steer of what you'd like to do of your own style before you go in, and then just check all the other, that'll be really important things. Make sure you've got 2 cameras, make sure you've got lots of batteries, make sure you've got lots of, a bottle of water and a protein bar in your bag, all the things that you can control. Just make sure you're on top of them.
Okay, good advice. Thank you. So your final number, please.
Oh, let's go for 8.
Number 8. How has your confidence grown or changed with the development of your career? And that question is another one from Janina.
When I talk about unhealthy doubt and healthy doubt, so I think you will naturally become more confident the more weddings you shoot. So although I've been shooting weddings for be 13 years this year, I've still only done, I think my number's like 230 or something like that, which isn't that many in comparison to other people. However, maybe without me having cancer, I might have got to a point where I felt a bit more confident because I've come across most scenarios. And until you have come across different situations, you don't really know how you're going to capture it. So unfortunately, the more experience you have, the more confident you'll be, which isn't ideal when you're just starting out, but it does give some people hope that negative voice might start to get quiet as their journey progresses. So it's definitely, it's hard for me to know because obviously I did have that experience. But my confidence and my work and my business is such a big, they're all kind of intertwined. So I think just the more you do, as anything, the more you repeat something, the more you're going to get more confident at it.
Do you employ any different techniques or additional techniques now that you didn't when you first started out?
No, I'm still very much shooting weddings the same way I used to. Just little things like I feel more confident that things I'm doing are right for me. For a while, sometimes people in the industry would say, I would include like a pre-wedding shoot in my packages. Initially, I did it because I wasn't that confident doing portraits. So I would see it as a way to practice portraits. As I've become much more known for my documentary, now I have to almost have a disclaimer that you don't have to have a pre-wedding shoot, but we have to go to the pub together. We have to meet and chat because I need that connection with you. So it's I'm much more confident now about my decisions and what I'm doing. But in terms of new techniques that I've done, no, I don't think there's any.
Erica, thank you so much for answering those questions and joining me today on the SheClicks Women in Photography podcast. It's been really wonderful hearing from you. And although the circumstances in which you have overcome imposter syndrome were really quite terrifying, it's great to hear how happy and positive you are about your work these days.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, I do. I feel really good for it. And I just hope that anyone listening who has similar thoughts and similar feelings, wherever they are in their photography journey, I hope that they can recognise the unhealthy ones versus the ones that just healthy doubt and healthy creativity, and maybe find some things to put in place to help them change their way of thinking.
I hope so. Okay, well, thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the SheClicks Women in Photography podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Special thanks to everybody who sent in a question. You'll find links to Erica's website and social media channels in the show notes. I'll be back with another episode soon, so please subscribe to the show on your favourite podcast platform and tell all your friends and followers about it. You'll also find SheClicks on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and YouTube if you search for SheClicks Net. So until next time, enjoy your photography.